The desert doesn't forgive hesitation. It swallows sound, distorts distance, and strips away everything but survival instinct. For the soldiers of Forward Operating Base Sentinel, every mission into the Kandahar Highlands carried the weight of precision. GPS coordinates, encrypted comms, extraction windows measured in minutes. But on October 14th, when a routine reconnaissance patrol vanished into a sandstorm 40 miles beyond the perimeter, every system designed to bring them home failed. Satellites went blind. Radio signals died in the static. The command center watched helplessly as 6 names on a screen became 6 lives running out of time. What no one expected was that the answer wouldn't come from technology, training, or tactical protocol. It would come from a German shepherd named Ranger, a dog who wasn't certified for combat operations, who had failed his final evaluation, and who wasn't supposed to be on base at all. His handler, Specialist Emily Voss, had kept him in the kennels as a training assistant, believing his instincts were too sharp to waste. When the order came to assemble every available search asset, she made a choice that would break every regulation in the manual and redefine what loyalty means when everything else has already failed. This is the story of a mission that became a testament, of a soldier who trusted her dog more than her orders, and of 6 men who owe their lives to the animal the military said wasn't good enough. Chapter 1. That morning, no one expected a single act of defiance to change military history. What began as routine training became a moment every soldier on base would remember, and one that would test the difference between following orders and doing what's right. Specialist Emily Voss stood at attention in the K9 training yard, boots planted in the dust, sun already baking the back of her neck at 0700 hours. Ranger sat beside her, perfectly still, except for the slight tilt of his ears, tracking movement across the compound. He was 2 years old, 90 pounds of muscle and focus, with eyes that seemed to calculate every angle before he moved. At ease, Specialist. Captain Garrett approached with a clipboard and the kind of expression that meant bad news, delivered efficiently. "I've reviewed Ranger's final evaluation reports." Emily's jaw tightened. She knew what was coming. "His detection scores are exceptional," Garrett continued, scanning the paperwork. "Explosive compounds, narcotics, even cadaver scent, top percentile across the board. But his aggression threshold is inconsistent. He's too reactive to perceived threats. We can't certify him for forward deployment." "With respect, sir, that's not aggression. That's protective instinct." Emily kept her voice level, professional. "He distinguishes between threat assessment and engagement. He's never acted without cause." Garrett looked at Ranger, who hadn't moved. The psych evaluation flagged him as unpredictable. In a combat zone, unpredictable gets people killed. "Sir, he's reading micro cues the rest of us miss. He knows when something's wrong before—" "The decision is final, Specialist." Garrett's tone softened slightly. "He can stay on base as a training assistant, but he doesn't deploy. That's non-negotiable." Emily saluted. "Understood, sir." As Garrett walked away, she crouched down and ran her hand over Ranger's head. He leaned into her palm, exhaling slowly. "They don't see what I see," she murmured. "But they will." 3 hours later, the alarm shattered the midday heat. Emily was running drills with the junior handlers when the loudspeakers crackled to life across FOB Sentinel. "Code Black. Repeat. Code Black. All search and rescue assets report to command immediately." Code Black meant missing personnel. Emily's blood went cold. She sprinted toward the command center, Ranger matching her stride without a leash. Inside, the operations room was controlled chaos. Officers clustered around screens showing nothing but static and sand, radios hissing with dead air. Lieutenant Colonel Hayes stood at the center, his face carved from stone. Six-man recon patrol, call sign Eagle 4, missed their extraction window 40 minutes ago. Last known position was Grid Echo 7, 70 clicks northwest. Sandstorm rolled in fast, visibility 0, comms down, GPS unreliable. Emily's chest tightened. Echo 7 was deep desert beyond the usual patrol routes. 40 minutes in that terrain, in a storm, could mean hypothermia, dehydration, or worse. We're assembling 2 helo search teams, Hayes continued, but we're flying blind until the storm clears. Ground assets will stage at the perimeter. If anyone has operational K9s with desert tracking experience, now's the time. Emily glanced down at Ranger. He was staring at the map projection on the wall, head cocked, nostrils flaring slightly. She knew that posture. He was already working. Captain Garrett stepped forward. "Sir, we have 3 certified K9s available. I'll coordinate 4, sir." Emily's voice cut through the room. Garrett turned, eyes narrowing. "Specialist Voss, your dog isn't cleared for... He's the best tracker on this base, and you know it." She held his gaze. "Those men don't have time for certifications." The room went silent. Hayes looked at Emily, then at Ranger, then at Garrett. "Captain," Garrett's jaw worked. "Sir, protocol requires... Protocol won't find 6 soldiers in a sandstorm." Hayes's voice was quiet, absolute. "If Specialist Voss believes her dog can contribute, I want him in the field. Gear up." "You leave in 10 minutes." Emily saluted, heart hammering. "Yes, sir." As she turned to leave, Garrett caught her arm. "If anything goes wrong out there, it's on you." She met his eyes. "If I don't bring them home, sir, I'll live with that. But I won't live with not trying." Ranger was already moving toward the door, pulling toward the desert as if he could smell the lost patrol from here. Maybe he could. Chapter 2. The helicopter banked hard over the desert, rotor wash kicking up spirals of sand that glowed amber in the late afternoon sun. Emily sat strapped in beside Ranger, her hand resting on his vest as the landscape blurred beneath them. The storm had shifted east, leaving behind a haze that turned the horizon into watercolor smudges of ochre and shadow. Through her headset, the pilot's voice crackled. 2 minutes to drop zone. Visibility improving but still under half a mile. Ground temp 120 degrees. Watch for heat exhaustion. Emily checked Ranger's hydration pack and cooling vest one more time. He was calm, focused, eyes fixed on the open door, as if he could already see what they were searching for. The other 3 K9 teams sat across from her. Handlers she'd trained with, dogs she'd worked alongside, Sergeant Torres with his Belgian Malinois, Ajax, Corporal Kim with her Dutch Shepherd, Sabre, Private Dawson with his Labrador, Trace. All certified, all proven, all watching Ranger with curiosity and something close to doubt. Torres leaned forward, voice cutting through the engine noise. "Voss, no disrespect, but if your dog spooks out there, he won't." Emily's tone left no room for argument. "We'll be spread across a 5-mile radius," Kim added. "If he picks up a false trail and pulls us off course, then you follow your dogs, and I'll follow mine." Emily met her eyes. "But when Ranger locks onto something, it's not false." The helicopter descended fast, flaring hard as it touched down in a wash of dust and heat. Emily unclipped and dropped to the sand, Ranger beside her, before she could call him. The wind hit them like a wall, dry and vicious, pulling moisture from skin and lungs. Lieutenant Marsh, the ground operations commander, was waiting with a tactical map spread across the hood of a Humvee. Eagle 4's last transmission put them here. He tapped a point northwest of their position. But the storm could have pushed them anywhere in this sector. We're dividing the search grid into quadrants. Torres, you take north. Kim, northeast. Dawson, west. Voss. He paused, glancing at Ranger. You take northwest. That's the roughest terrain, most likely to cause disorientation. Emily understood what he wasn't saying. He was putting her where failure was most expected. Copy that, sir. Marsh handed her a radio and GPS tracker. Check in every 30 minutes. If you find anything, equipment, tracks, blood trail, you call it in immediately. Do not engage rescue alone, understood? Yes, sir. Move out. The teams dispersed into the haze, dogs pulling forward with purpose. Handlers scanning the endless sweep of rock and sand. Emily adjusted her pack, checked Ranger's position, and started walking. The desert swallowed them whole. For the first hour, there was nothing. Endless dunes, scattered outcrops of stone, the skeletal remains of scrub brush. The heat pressed down like a physical weight. Emily's uniform stuck to her skin, sweat evaporating before it could cool her. Ranger moved steadily, nose down, working the wind in patterns she'd learned to read, sweeping left, circling back, testing currents. But he wasn't alerting. Not yet. The radio crackled. Torres to command. Ajax has possible scent trace, grid November 2, advancing to confirm. Emily's pulse quickened. She keyed her mic. Voss copies. Another voice. Kim here. Sabre's tracking boot prints heading east. Could be recent. Emily glanced at Ranger. He'd stopped, head raised, nostrils flaring in rapid succession. Not the alert posture, but close. He was sensing something at the edge of detection, something faint. Talk to me, boy, she murmured. What do you have? Ranger took 3 steps forward, paused, then shifted direction, not toward the coordinates command had given them, but 30 degrees south. Emily hesitated. Every instinct said, follow him. Every regulation said, stick to the grid. She followed him. They moved for another 20 minutes, climbing into rockier terrain, where the sand gave way to broken shale and wind-carved stone. The air felt different here, cooler somehow, as if channeled through unseen passages. Ranger's pace increased. His ears were forward now, tail level. Then he stopped. Emily dropped to one knee beside him. What is it? Ranger's nose touched the ground, moved in a tight circle, then lifted. He looked at her, directly, purposefully, and barked once, the alert. Emily's heart slammed against her ribs. She scanned the area but saw nothing. No tracks, no equipment, just rock and shadow. Show me, she commanded. Ranger moved forward faster now, scrambling up a slope of loose stone. Emily followed, boots sliding on the incline. At the top, the ground fell away into a narrow canyon, and there, barely visible in the fading light, was a piece of fabric snagged on a thorn bush. Desert camouflage. Standard issue. Emily keyed her radio, hands shaking. Voss to command. Ranger has positive trace. Evidence of personnel. Grid Papa 4, advancing to confirm. Static. Then Marsh's voice, tight with focus. Copy, Voss. Proceed with caution. Other teams redirecting to your position. Emily looked down at Ranger. He was already moving into the canyon, pulling against the leash with controlled urgency. She let him lead. The canyon walls closed in around them, cutting the wind, trapping heat. Emily's breathing echoed off stone. Ranger's paws scraped softly against rock, and then, faint, so faint she almost missed it, a sound. Metal on metal, a buckle maybe, or a weapon sling. Ranger froze, then lunged forward. Easy, Emily commanded, but he was already around the bend and she had no choice but to follow. What she saw made her breath stop. 6 soldiers, huddled in the shade of an overhang, barely conscious. Faces burned red from sun exposure, lips cracked and bleeding. One man had a makeshift tourniquet on his leg, the fabric dark with dried blood. They were alive, barely. Emily dropped to her knees beside the nearest soldier, checking his pulse. Weak, but steady. Eagle 4, this is Voss. I have visual on all 6 personnel. Medical assistance required immediately. Grid Papa 4 Alpha. Ranger moved among the soldiers, sniffing each one, his tail wagging slowly. Relief, maybe, or satisfaction. The soldier with the leg wound opened his eyes, squinting at Emily. His voice was a rasp. Thought we were dead. Emily pulled out her canteen, held it to his lips. Not today. He drank, coughed, then looked at Ranger. That your dog? Yeah. He's not cleared for deployment. A ghost of a smile. Read your files. At morning brief. Emily smiled back, tears burning her eyes. Neither were you, apparently. The radio crackled. Medevac inbound. ETA 6 minutes. Emily sat back on her heels, hand resting on Ranger's head as he settled beside her, panting softly. She'd broken every rule to be here, and 6 men would live because of it. Chapter 3. The Medevac helicopters came in low and fast, rotors screaming against the canyon walls, kicking up a storm of dust that turned the air into a swirling haze of gold and shadow. Emily shielded her eyes as the first bird touched down 30 meters from the overhang. Medics already spilling out with stretchers and equipment. Ranger stayed close to her side, ears pinned back against the rotor wash, but otherwise calm. He watched the medics work with the same focused intensity he'd shown tracking through the desert, as if his mission wasn't finished until every soldier was loaded and lifted out. The team leader, a staff sergeant Emily didn't recognize, gripped her shoulder as they carried him past. "Your dog saved us." His voice was barely audible over the engine noise. "Tell him. Thank you." Emily's throat tightened. He knows. Within minutes, all 6 members of Eagle 4 were secured and airborne, the helicopters banking east toward the base hospital. The canyon fell silent except for the wind and the settling dust. Lieutenant Marsh approached, radio in hand, his expression unreadable. "Voss, hell of a piece of work." "Thank you, sir. Command wants a full debrief when we get back." He glanced at Ranger. "And they want to know how a dog that failed certification found 6 soldiers when 3 certified K9s were working the wrong sector entirely." Emily kept her face neutral. "Ranger works scent patterns differently, sir. He doesn't follow protocols. He follows what's there." Marsh studied her for a long moment. "You went off-grid. You ignored the assigned search coordinates." "I followed my dog, sir." "Which is exactly what you're not supposed to do with an uncertified animal." His tone wasn't angry, just factual. "You realize you've put me in a position where I have to file an incident report?" "Yes, sir. I understand." "Good." Marsh turned to leave, then paused. "For what it's worth, Specialist, if I'm ever lost out here, I hope to God someone sends you and that dog to find me." Emily exhaled slowly as he walked away. Ranger leaned against her leg, and she crouched down, wrapping her arms around his neck. "We're in trouble, boy. You know that, right?" He licked her face once, tail wagging. "Worth it. Comment where you're watching from. I want to know how far stories of courage and integrity can reach." The ride back to Fob Sentinel was tense and quiet. Emily sat in the back of the Humvee, with Ranger sprawled across her lap, too exhausted to care about regulations. Torres and Kim were in the vehicle ahead, their dogs equally spent from hours of fruitless searching. No one spoke on the radio, no one acknowledged what had just happened, but Emily could feel the weight of it settling over her like sand. The questions that would come, the scrutiny, the evaluation of whether her instinct had been genius or recklessness. When they rolled through the base gates at 2100 hours, Captain Garrett was waiting at the motor pool, arms crossed, face carved from granite. Emily climbed out of the Humvee, helped Ranger down, and stood at attention. Garrett walked a slow circle around them, saying nothing. Then, 6 men are alive because you disobeyed a direct order and deployed an uncertified K9 against protocol." "Yes, sir." "You left your assigned search grid without authorization." "Yes, sir." "You made a command decision in the field based on nothing but faith in an animal that every evaluation said couldn't be trusted." Emily's jaw tightened. "With respect, sir, I trusted him because I know him. The evaluations measure compliance, they don't measure instinct." Garrett stopped in front of her, close enough that she could see the exhaustion in his eyes. "Do you have any idea what kind of shitstorm you've just created for me, for this unit?" "I can imagine, sir." "Can you?" His voice dropped. "Because right now, Lieutenant Colonel Hayes is on a call with the base commander. explaining why we deployed a failed K-9 candidate on a life-or-death mission. Every decision I've made regarding certification standards is being questioned. Every handler in this unit is wondering whether the rules even matter anymore. Emily forced herself to hold his gaze. Sir, the rules exist to save lives. That's what we did. Garrett stared at her for 5 long seconds. Then, almost imperceptibly, his expression softened. Get your dog fed and rested. Report to my office at 0800 tomorrow. We'll deal with this then. Yes, sir. As Garrett walked away, Torres appeared at Emily's side. Ajax trotted beside him, tail wagging at the sight of Ranger. That was either the ballsiest thing I've ever seen or the dumbest. Haven't decided which. Emily managed a tired smile. Me neither. For the record, Torres's voice quieted. Ajax had nothing. We were working a cold trail for 2 hours. If Command had listened to protocol, those men would have died out there. Kim joined them, Saber nosing curiously at Ranger. The whole base is talking about it. Half think you're a hero. The other half think you should be court-martialed. What do you think? Emily asked. Kim shrugged. I think your dog is either a genius or you're the luckiest person alive. Maybe both. Dawson approached last, his Labrador Trace limping slightly from the heat. Voss, we need to talk about how Ranger reads scent, because whatever he's doing, it's not what we're teaching in K-9 school. Emily looked down at Ranger, who was watching all 3 dogs with calm, patient eyes, like an older brother tolerating younger siblings. He doesn't follow the scent, Emily said quietly. He follows the story the scent tells. The wind direction, the temperature change, the way heat moves through canyons. He's reading the environment like a map. Torres whistled low. And they failed him. They failed him, Emily repeated. Because he doesn't work like other dogs. He works like himself. The 4 handlers stood in the darkness of the motor pool, dogs at their sides, the weight of what had happened settling over them like the desert cold. Finally, Torres clapped Emily on the shoulder. Get some rest. Tomorrow's going to be a hell of a day. They dispersed into the night, leaving Emily and Ranger alone beneath the floodlights. She walked him to the kennels, filled his water bowl, checked his paws for cuts and burns. He drank deeply, then collapsed onto his mat with a groan of pure exhaustion. Emily sat beside him, one hand resting on his side, feeling the steady rise and fall of his breathing. You did good today, she whispered. I don't care what anyone says. You did exactly what you were born to do. Ranger's tail thumped once against the concrete floor. Emily leaned back against the chain-link fence, staring up at the stars barely visible through the haze of dust and light pollution. Somewhere in the base hospital, 6 soldiers were receiving treatment, rehydrating, being examined for injuries. They would recover. They would return to duty. They would tell the story of how a dog that wasn't supposed to be there found them when everything else failed. And tomorrow, Emily would face the consequences of trusting her instincts over the system. But tonight, she'd sleep knowing she'd made the right choice, even if the military didn't agree. Chapter 4. Emily didn't sleep. She lay in her bunk staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of the mission, every decision that had led to Ranger finding Eagle 4. At 0500 hours, she gave up trying and headed to the kennels. Ranger was already awake, sitting at attention by the gate, as if he'd been waiting for her. You too, huh? She unlocked the enclosure and sat beside him on the concrete. He leaned into her, solid and warm. Outside, the base was stirring to life, boots on gravel, engines coughing to life, the metallic clang of equipment being loaded. At 0730, Emily showered, dressed in her cleanest uniform, and walked Ranger to the command building. Other soldiers watched them pass, some nodding respect, others whispering, a few staring with open hostility. The rumour mill had been working overtime. Captain Garrett's office door was open. He sat behind his desk, reading a report, coffee steaming beside his keyboard. "Enter." Emily stepped inside, Ranger at her heel. "Specialist Voss reporting as ordered, sir." Garrett gestured to the chair across from him. "Sit. Him too." Ranger settled at Emily's feet, eyes forward, completely still. Garrett set down the report and leaned back. Lieutenant Colonel Hayes spent 3 hours last night on calls with higher command, the base commander, the K9 program director, even someone from CENTCOM wanted to know what the hell happened yesterday. Emily's stomach tightened. "Sir, let me finish." Garrett's tone was firm, but not hostile. "You deployed an uncertified dog on a critical rescue mission. You deviated from your assigned search grid without authorization. You made command decisions in the field based solely on your animal's behavior, with no tactical justification. Yes, sir. By every measure, you violated protocol." He paused. "You also saved 6 lives." The silence stretched between them. Garrett pulled a folder from his desk and opened it. "This is Ranger's full evaluation file. I've read it 3 times since yesterday. Do you know what it says?" "That he's unpredictable, sir." "That he's operationally unpredictable," Garrett corrected, "which the psychologists interpreted as a failure to conform to standard behavioral patterns. But yesterday made me look at this differently." He tapped the file. Every test he failed was about compliance, following commands exactly as trained, suppressing instinct in favor of learned behavior. Emily felt her breath catch. "Sir?" "The evaluators measured him against other dogs. They didn't measure whether he was effective." Garrett closed the file. "Lieutenant Colonel Hayes wants a full investigation. He wants to know if we have a systemic problem with our certification standards, if we're screening out dogs who think differently but work better." "He does work better," Emily said quietly. "He reads situations the way humans should, but don't. He makes connections we miss, which is exactly the problem." Garrett leaned forward. "If we certify him, we're admitting our entire K9 program might be flawed. If we don't, we're saying a dog who saved 6 soldiers isn't good enough for the military. Either way, this becomes a case study." Emily's hands clenched in her lap. "What does that mean for Ranger?" "It means he's under evaluation, formal, intensive, observed by outside assessors." Garrett's expression softened slightly. "It also means you're not in trouble. Hayes made that clear. You acted on tactical intuition and field conditions. That's not insubordination. That's good soldiering." The tension in Emily's chest eased slightly. "Thank you, sir." "Don't thank me yet." Garrett pulled out another document. "The 6 soldiers from Eagle 4 are being debriefed today. They're all listing Ranger in their after-action reports. Social media is already picking up the story. Someone leaked details to a military blog. By tomorrow, this will be national news." Emily's eyes widened. "Sir, I didn't—" "I know you didn't. But it's out there. Military dog fails certification, saves 6 soldiers." It's the kind of headline that makes people ask questions. "What kind of questions?" Garrett met her eyes. "Whether the military is more interested in obedience than ability. Whether we're training dogs to follow rules or save lives." He stood, walked to the window overlooking the training yard. "You've put us in a position where we have to prove Ranger is either an exception or evidence of a bigger problem." Emily rose, standing at attention. "Sir, Ranger isn't the problem. The evaluation system is." "Careful, specialist. With respect, sir, we're testing dogs for combat roles using peacetime metrics. We're measuring compliance instead of adaptability. Ranger failed because he thinks like a soldier, not a machine." Garrett turned, something almost like a smile touching his face. You've given this speech before. To anyone who would listen, sir. Well, now the entire K9 program is listening. He handed her a schedule. Ranger starts re-evaluation tomorrow. Different assessors, different scenarios, real-world conditions. If he passes, he gets certified. If he doesn't... Garrett paused. If he doesn't, Hayes wants to know why, and he wants recommendations for changing how we evaluate working dogs. Emily took the schedule, hands shaking slightly. He'll pass, sir. For your sake and his, I hope you're right. Garrett returned to his desk. Dismissed. And Voss, keep him out of trouble until tomorrow. Emily saluted, then paused at the door. Sir, what do you think about Ranger? Garrett looked at the dog, who hadn't moved throughout the entire conversation, sitting with perfect discipline despite not being commanded. I think, Garrett said slowly, that he's exactly what we need, and that scares the hell out of the people who wrote the manual. Emily spent the rest of the day in the training yard, working with Ranger on basic drills, not because he needed practice, but because she needed to do something. Torres, Kim, and Dawson joined her after lunch, bringing their own dogs, turning it into an impromptu session that drew a crowd of off-duty soldiers. Word had spread fast. Everyone wanted to see the dog who found the lost patrol. By 1600 hours, even Lieutenant Colonel Hayes appeared at the fence line, watching silently as Ranger completed a complex scent discrimination test, identifying a specific soldier's equipment from a lineup of identical gear. He was perfect, flawless, focused. Hayes approached Emily as she called Ranger back. Specialist, walk with me. Emily fell into step beside him, Ranger between them. Hayes said nothing for a full minute, just walked the perimeter of the training area. Finally, when I commissioned 15 years ago, I thought the military was about following orders, about discipline, hierarchy, chain of command. He glanced at her. I still believe that. But yesterday reminded me that sometimes the most disciplined act is knowing when to trust yourself over the system. Emily wasn't sure how to respond, so she stayed silent. Your dog didn't fail his evaluation, Hayes continued. The evaluation failed him. It measured the wrong things, and because of that, we almost lost 6 good soldiers. Sir, I'm not finished. Hayes stopped, turned to face her fully. Tomorrow, Ranger gets retested. If he passes, he deploys. If he passes and proves the evaluations are fundamentally broken, we rewrite them. This base, this program, is going to lead that change. Emily felt tears prick her eyes. Yes, sir. But understand this. Hayes's voice hardened. You and Ranger are now the face of this. Everything you do will be scrutinized. Every mission, every decision, every outcome. You'll be proving something bigger than yourselves. We're ready, sir. Hayes looked at Ranger, who sat perfectly still, eyes on Emily. I believe you are. He started to walk away, then paused. One more thing. The soldier with the leg wound, Corporal Martinez. He asked to meet Ranger. When he's released from medical, make that happen. Of course, sir. Emily watched Hayes disappear into the command building, then looked down at Ranger. You hear that, boy? Tomorrow, we show them what you can really do. Ranger's tail wagged once, confident, ready. They walked back to the kennels as the sun began its descent toward the horizon, painting the desert in shades of copper and shadow. Tomorrow, everything would change, but tonight, they were exactly where they belonged. Chapter 5. The re-evaluation began at 0600 hours in a section of desert 20 miles from base, terrain deliberately chosen for its complexity, rocky outcrops, deep washes, scattered vegetation, and enough environmental variables to challenge even the most experienced K9 teams. Emily arrived to find an audience: Captain Garrett, Lieutenant Colonel Hayes, 2 civilian K9 program evaluators from Virginia, and a behavioral psychologist from the Army Veterinary Corps. They stood beside a cluster of vehicles, tablets and cameras ready. expressions professionally neutral. The lead evaluator, a woman named Dr. Sarah Chen, approached with a clipboard. Specialist Voss, I've reviewed Ranger's previous assessment. Today we're testing practical application, not compliance. Real scenarios, real pressure, understand? Yes, ma'am. Good. Chen gestured to the terrain. We've hidden 3 targets in a 4-square-mile area. 1 is human scent. A volunteer we've moved through the landscape. 1 is explosive compounds. 1 is medical supplies we need located. Ranger has 2 hours to find all 3. No GPS assistance, no handler cues beyond basic commands. Emily felt her pulse quicken. This was harder than yesterday's rescue. Multiple objectives, time pressure, observers watching every move. One more thing. Chen's expression remained neutral. The other 3 certified K9s will be running the same course simultaneously. We're comparing methodology, not just results. Emily glanced across the staging area and saw Torres, Kim, and Dawson preparing their dogs. Ajax, Saber, and Trace, all proven, all certified, all competing against the dog who supposedly wasn't good enough. Garrett caught her eye and gave the slightest nod. You've got this. Teams ready positions. Chen checked her watch. On my mark. Mark. Emily released Ranger's lead. Find. He moved immediately, not rushing but purposeful, nose down, working the morning air currents. The other dogs spread out in systematic search patterns, north, northeast, west, following their training. Ranger went south. Emily followed, trusting him completely, aware of Chen and the other evaluators trailing behind, cameras recording, tablets tracking GPS coordinates. For 10 minutes, Ranger worked a wide arc through broken terrain, pausing occasionally to test the wind, circling back to recheck certain areas. Emily recognized the pattern now. He wasn't searching randomly. He was mapping the scent landscape, identifying where currents flowed, where heat created updrafts, where shade might trap older scent. Then he stopped at a narrow wash, head tilted, ears forward. What is it? Emily asked quietly. Ranger didn't alert, not yet. He moved into the wash, scrambling down the sandy slope, nose working in rapid bursts. Emily followed, boots sliding on loose rock. At the bottom, barely visible beneath overhanging brush, was a scatter of medical packaging, bandages, antiseptic wipes, an emergency compress. Target 1. Ranger sat, the formal alert position, and looked at Emily. Good boy. Mark. Emily keyed her radio. Voss. Target acquired. Medical supplies. Grid designation Delta 7. Chen's voice crackled back. Confirmed. Continue. 20 minutes later, Ranger found the explosive compound, a training charge hidden inside a fake rock 30 meters from where the other dogs were still searching. He alerted from 5 meters away, refusing to approach closer, exactly as trained for real ordnance. Emily felt pride swell in her chest. Mark. Ranger. Out. They moved to the next sector. The human scent target was the hardest. The volunteer had been moved through the terrain hours earlier, their trail deliberately crossed with animal tracks and other distractors. Emily watched the other teams struggling, dogs frustrated by false leads. Ranger worked differently. He ignored the ground trail entirely, focusing instead on elevated scent, places where the volunteer had touched vegetation, disturbed branches, left skin cells on rock surfaces. Hayes, standing with the evaluators, spoke into his radio. Dr. Chen, are you seeing this? Confirmed. He's tracking residual contact, not footfall. It's, unusual. Is it effective? A pause. Yes, extremely. 45 minutes into the evaluation, Ranger led Emily to a cave opening partially concealed by fallen stone. He alerted hard, sitting, staring, refusing to break focus. Emily approached cautiously and called into the darkness. Anyone in there? A voice echoed back. Here. Been waiting for someone to find me for 90 minutes. The volunteer emerged, grinning. Your dog is the first one to even get close. Emily radioed the find, then looked at Ranger. He was panting slightly, but otherwise calm, satisfied. You're showing off now, aren't you? His tail wagged. If this story already has your respect, hit the like button. It helps the story of Ranger reach those who still believe in honor. By 0900 hours, all teams had completed the evaluation. They gathered at the staging area, while Chen and her team reviewed the data, comparing times, accuracy rates, and methodology. Torres approached Emily. Ajax sprawled exhausted at his feet. 48 minutes. Ranger found everything in 48 minutes. How long did Ajax take? Hour and 20. And he missed the medical supplies entirely. Aunt Torres shook his head. How the hell does Ranger do that? Kim joined them. Saber found 2 out of 3. Got frustrated on the explosive compound and quit. She's never done that before. Dawson just stared at Ranger with something like awe. Trace took the full 2 hours and only found 1 target. I've been handling him for 3 years. I thought we were good. You are good, Emily said firmly. Ranger just processes differently. That's an understatement. Torres crouched beside Ranger, studying him. It's like he's not just smelling things. He's thinking about what the smell means. Like he's solving a puzzle instead of following a trail. Emily nodded slowly. That's exactly it. He's not trained. He's intelligent. Captain Garrett's voice cut through the conversation. All personnel, gather up. They assembled in a loose formation. Dr. Chen stood beside Hayes, tablet in hand, expression unreadable. We've reviewed the results, Chen began. All 4 dogs performed admirably under challenging conditions. Ajax, Saber, and Trace demonstrated exactly what we expect from certified military working dogs: discipline, persistence, and systematic methodology. Emily's stomach tightened. Here it comes. Ranger, Chen continued, demonstrated something we don't typically see. He operated with minimal handler direction, adapted his search pattern based on environmental conditions, and located all 3 targets in approximately half the time of the certified dogs. Silence. His methodology is unorthodox. He doesn't follow standard search protocols. He makes independent decisions that, frankly, would concern any evaluator looking at behavioral predictability. Chen paused, but his effectiveness is undeniable. Hayes stepped forward. Dr. Chen and I have consulted with the Program Oversight Committee. As of this moment, Ranger is provisionally certified for deployment, pending 6 months of monitored field operations. Emily's breath caught. However, Hayes continued, this case has exposed significant questions about how we evaluate working dogs, effective immediately. Phoebe Sentinel will pilot a new assessment program focusing on practical outcomes rather than procedural compliance. Specialist Voss and Ranger will be the first team tested under this new standard. Chen nodded. We'll be studying Ranger's methods, documenting his decision-making process, and using that data to potentially revise K9 certification across all branches. This dog may change how we train and evaluate military working animals. Torres whistled low. No pressure, Voss. Hayes's expression remained serious. This isn't just about one dog or one handler. This is about ensuring we're putting the most effective teams in the field, even if they don't look like what we expect. Understood? A chorus of "Yes, sir" echoed across the staging area. Good. Dismissed. As the group dispersed, Emily stood frozen, Ranger leaning against her leg. She'd come here expecting validation or rejection. Instead, she'd gotten responsibility. Garrett approached, something almost like a smile on his face. Congratulations, Specialist. You and Ranger are now a pilot program. Sir, I just wanted him to be able to work. Well, now he can. And everyone's going to be watching? Garrett glanced at Hayes, who was deep in conversation with Chen. Fair warning. This is going to be intense. Every mission you run will be documented, analyzed, compared to standard operations. You're going to feel like you're under a microscope." Emily looked down at Ranger. "We can handle it." "I believe you can. Just remember, you're not just proving Ranger anymore. You're proving that the system can evolve." As Garrett walked away, Torres clapped Emily on the shoulder. "So, when do we get to see what else that dog can do?" Emily smiled, the first genuine smile in days. "I guess we're about to find out." She walked Ranger back to the transport vehicle, the weight of what had just happened settling over her like armor. Ranger had been given a chance. The K9 program had been challenged, and 6 soldiers were alive because someone had trusted instinct over regulation. Tomorrow, they'd start proving it wasn't a fluke. But today they'd won. Chapter 6. The first official mission under Ranger's provisional certification came 72 hours later. A supply convoy had been ambushed 15 miles outside the wire. No casualties, but the insurgents had scattered IEDs along the retreat route, homemade explosives buried in the roadway, designed to kill anyone attempting recovery. 3 routes needed to be cleared before the disabled vehicles could be extracted. Standard protocol called for multiple K9 teams and EOD specialists. Hayes assembled 4 units in the briefing room: Torres and Ajax, Kim and Saber, Emily and Ranger, and a team from another base, Staff Sergeant Malik and his German shepherd, Odin. 3 routes, 4 teams, Hayes explained, pointing at the satellite imagery. Route Alpha is mostly hardpack, low vegetation. Route Bravo follows a dried riverbed, rocky, unstable terrain. Route Charlie cuts through a small village. Structures, civilians, maximum complexity. Emily studied the map, already knowing which route Ranger would handle best. "Torres, you take Alpha. Kim, Bravo. Malik, you're primary on Charlie with building-to-building clearance." Hayes turned to Emily. "Voss, you're Charlie backup. Ranger works secondary sweep behind Odin." Secondary safety net. The position reserved for the dog they still weren't completely sure about. Emily swallowed her pride. "Yes, sir." Malik nodded respectfully. "Heard about your rescue last week. Looking forward to working with you both." They deployed at 1400 hours, convoy vehicles rumbling through the gate under overcast skies. The air felt heavy, electric, like the desert before a storm. Route Charlie was exactly as briefed. Narrow streets, mud brick buildings, children watching from doorways with wide, cautious eyes. Malik and Odin worked methodically, clearing one structure at a time, while Emily and Ranger waited at interval positions, ready to move if needed. For 2 hours, nothing. Just the slow, careful pace of EOD work. Odin alerting on suspicious areas, Malik calling in the tech specialists, Emily watching Ranger's body language for any sign he was detecting something the other dog missed. Then Odin stopped at a courtyard entrance and refused to move forward. Malik tried every command, every technique to get him to proceed. The dog simply sat, trembling slightly, staring at the entrance but not entering. Emily keyed her radio. "Malik, want me to bring Ranger up?" A long pause. Pride versus practicality. "Copy. Move to my position." Emily and Ranger advanced, boots crunching on gravel. Malik stood beside Odin, frustration tight in his shoulders. "He's never frozen like this. Something's wrong, but I can't identify what." Emily studied the courtyard. It looked empty. Packed earth, a few scattered tools, an old cart against the far wall. "Ranger, search!" Ranger moved past Odin without hesitation, nose working rapidly. He entered the courtyard, swept the perimeter, then stopped at the cart. Not an alert. Something else. He looked back at Emily, then at the cart, then back again. Emily approached carefully, scanning for tripwires, pressure plates, anything that might trigger a device. Nothing visible. Ranger pawed gently at the ground beside the cart, not digging, just indicating. Emily knelt, brushing away surface dust. Her fingers touched something smooth, plastic. She cleared more dirt and revealed a wire running from beneath the cart toward the entrance where Odin had stopped. Malik, tripwire, secondary pressure plate, it's daisy-chained. 2 devices designed to catch the team after they clear the first location. Malik's face went pale. If Odin had kept going, but he didn't. He knew something was wrong. Emily stood, carefully backing away from the wire. He's a good dog. He just couldn't tell you what he was sensing. While EOD moved in to disarm the devices, Emily rejoined Malik at the perimeter. Odin was still shaking, overwhelmed by conflicting instincts. Malik looked at Ranger, who sat calmly beside Emily, completely composed. Your dog didn't even hesitate. He trusts his training, and he trusts me to understand what he's telling me. Emily paused. Odin saved both our lives by refusing to move. That's good work. But Ranger found the actual threat. Different skills, same mission. Emily crouched beside Odin, let him sniff her hand, then scratched behind his ears. You did perfect, boy. You knew it was wrong. Over the radio, Torres's voice crackled. Route Alpha clear, no devices found. Then Kim, Route Bravo clear, 3 IEDs disarmed, road safe. Malik keyed his mic. Route Charlie, 2 devices disarmed, road clear. Credit goes to Voss and Ranger for identifying the secondary threat. Hayes's response was immediate. Good work, all teams, return to base. The debriefing lasted 2 hours. Dr. Chen had joined via video conference, reviewing the helmet camera footage from all 4 teams, analyzing every moment of Ranger's sweep. Specialist Voss, Chen began. When Ranger pawed at the ground beside the cart, what was he communicating? Emily thought carefully. He was showing me something irregular. He couldn't alert formally because the device wasn't in the location he was trained to indicate, so he adapted. That level of contextual communication is extremely rare in working dogs. It's not rare, Emily corrected gently. It's just not usually recognized. Most handlers are trained to only respond to formal alerts. Ranger knows I listen to everything he tells me. Hayes leaned forward. Dr. Chen, what's your assessment? Ranger is demonstrating what we'd call theory of mind, the ability to understand that his handler needs information and to find ways to communicate it beyond trained behaviors. It's cognitively sophisticated. Chen paused. It also means he's essentially creating his own communication language with Specialist Voss. Torres spoke up from across the room. So what you're saying is they're inventing their own system. Essentially, yes. And it works better than standard protocol. Chen hesitated. It works differently. Whether it's better depends on the handler's ability to interpret correctly. Garrett interjected, Today it prevented casualties. That seems pretty definitive. Agreed, Chen said. Which is why I'm recommending we accelerate Ranger's certification timeline. His provisional status is holding back data collection. If he's going to be the basis for program reform, we need him fully operational. Emily felt her heart pound. Ma'am, does that mean? It means, Hayes interrupted, that pending final psychological evaluation, Ranger will be fully certified within 2 weeks, and you'll be assigned to train other handlers on his methodology. Silence fell across the room. Emily looked at Ranger, who was lying quietly at her feet, completely unaware that he'd just revolutionized military K-9 operations. Torres grinned. So when do we start learning the secret Ranger language? When Specialist Voss is ready to teach it, Hayes replied. He stood, signaling the meeting's end. Dismissed. Voss, stay behind. The room emptied until only Emily, Hayes, and Garrett remained. Hayes closed the door. What I'm about to tell you stays in this room. Understood? Yes, sir. CENTCOM has requested Ranger for a high-value target operation in 6 weeks. Hostage extraction, hostile territory, limited tactical support. They specifically want a K-9 team that can operate independently and adapt to changing conditions. Hayes's expression was grave. It's exactly the kind of mission Ranger was built for. It's also the kind that gets soldiers killed if anything goes wrong. Emily's mouth went dry. Sir, we're ready. Are you? Because if you deploy on this mission and Ranger fails, or worse, if his unorthodox methods get someone hurt, it won't just end his career. It'll end the entire reform initiative. Every handler who wants to try something new will be shut down. Every evaluation change will be reversed. Garrett added quietly, You'll be carrying the future of the program on this one mission. Emily looked at both officers, then down at Ranger. He gazed back at her with those intelligent, calm eyes, the same eyes that had found 6 lost soldiers when everyone else had given up. Sir, Ranger doesn't know how to fail. He only knows how to solve problems. She stood at attention. We'll complete the mission, and we'll prove that trusting a dog's intelligence is just as important as trusting his training. Hayes studied her for a long moment. 6 weeks. Use them to prepare. You'll get the full mission brief 10 days before deployment. Yes, sir. As Emily turned to leave, Hayes added, Voss, for what it's worth, I believe in what you and that dog represent. Make sure you prove me right. We will, sir. Emily walked Ranger back to the kennels through the purple desert twilight, her mind already racing through training scenarios, contingencies, preparations. 6 weeks to prepare for a mission that would define everything. 6 weeks to prove that sometimes the best soldier is the one who thinks for himself. She looked down at Ranger, who walked beside her with perfect confidence, tail wagging slightly, ready for whatever came next. You know what's riding on this, don't you, boy? His tail wagged harder. He knew, and he was ready. Chapter 7. The 6 weeks passed in a blur of intensive training, scenario simulations, and constant documentation. Every session was recorded, analyzed, and added to Dr. Chen's growing database on Ranger's operational methodology. Emily worked with Hayes, Garrett, and a team of tacticians to prepare for the hostage extraction, an operation classified above her clearance level until the final briefing. What she knew: hostile territory, high-value American civilian held by an insurgent cell, conventional forces unable to penetrate without significant casualties. What she suspected: this was a test of whether K9 units could operate as independent tactical assets rather than just support elements. Torres, Kim, and Dawson joined the preparation, running parallel scenarios with their dogs to establish baseline comparisons. The training evolved into something unprecedented. 4 handler teams, learning from each other, adapting techniques, building a new operational doctrine in real time. On the morning of the final briefing, Emily was called to Hayes's office. He wasn't alone. A colonel she didn't recognize sat beside him, uniform crisp, expression carved from stone, the kind of officer who'd spent decades in special operations. Specialist Voss, this is Colonel Marcus Webb, Joint Special Operations Command. Hayes's tone was formal, carefully neutral. He's commanding the hostage extraction. Emily saluted. Sir. Webb didn't return the salute. He studied Ranger instead, eyes moving over the dog with clinical precision. This is the animal everyone's talking about. Yes, sir. And you're the handler who disobeyed direct orders to deploy him on an unauthorized rescue mission. Emily's jaw tightened. Sir, I followed my tactical judgment in a life-threatening situation, which resulted in 6 soldiers surviving who otherwise wouldn't have. Webb's expression didn't soften, but something changed in his eyes. I don't care about your methods, Specialist. I care about results. Your dog gets results. That's why you're here. He pulled up a satellite image on the display screen. The target location is a compound 40 kilometers inside hostile territory. 3 structures, walled courtyard, elevated guard positions. 1 HVT, An engineer named Rebecca Marsh, captured 2 months ago. Intelligence suggests she's being held in the central building, but we can't confirm without ground verification. Emily studied the compound. Multiple entry points, limited sight lines, too many variables. Standard assault would require a full platoon and air support, Webb continued. We can't deploy that without alerting every hostile in the region, so we're going small. 6 operators, 1 K9 team, insert at night, extract before dawn. Sir, what's Ranger's mission? 3 objectives. Webb tapped the screen. 1. Verify HVT location before we breach. 2. Detect IEDs or booby traps in the compound. 3. Identify hostiles versus civilians in the dark. He turned to face her directly. Can your dog do that? Emily met his gaze. Yes, sir. Even under fire. He works better under pressure. He knows when it matters. Webb glanced at Hayes. Your evaluation recommends full confidence in this team. You stand by that? Absolutely, sir. Good. Webb handed Emily a classified packet. You deploy in 72 hours. Study the mission profile. You'll train with the assault team tomorrow. They need to understand how you and Ranger operate. Any questions? Just one, sir. Why us? There are certified teams with more field experience. Webb's expression shifted. Not quite a smile, but close. Because when I was pinned down in Fallujah in 2005, a dog nobody believed in found the sniper position that was killing my squad. I've trusted unorthodox ever since. He stood. Don't let me down, specialist. I won't, sir. After Webb left, Hayes sat back heavily. You understand what's happening here? If this mission succeeds, Ranger becomes the model for a new generation of K9 operations. If it fails, it won't fail, sir. Emily. Hayes used her first name, which he'd never done before. This isn't a rescue in the desert where the only risk is heat exhaustion. You'll be in enemy territory with hostile combatants who will kill you if they detect your presence. Ranger won't have multiple chances to get it right. He only needs one chance, sir. That's what he does best. Hayes nodded slowly. Then make sure that one chance counts.